Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our E3 impressions. Final day of the show is yesterday. We still have 25 to 30 games, somewhere in that ballpark to get through. Some of these we'll have a little deeper dives into. A lot of them, I think we can get the point across a lot quicker, so they're not going to... I doubt we have any more full hour-long discussions.
Right, yeah.
But a lot of interesting games. Some of the games are smaller, some of them are bigger. But I wanted to start it off with a sure bet, and that is Hollow Knight Silksong, which Ben got to play. I was afraid we weren't going to get to do this because it's like it
wasn't an appointment.
Yeah, it wasn't in the Nintendo appointment. Like all the stuff they had playable, and it's like Hollow Knight's not playable. It's on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So yesterday, the final day of the show floor being open, I got done with my appointments around 4:20, and I was like, well, I could go back now, but I could play Hollow Knight, and I'm really glad I did.
I'm glad you did too.
Because I got to walk away with it with some pretty impressive takeaways, I think. Hollow Knight is a brilliant game. I think it has many fans here at Easy Allies. And just immediately, you can kind of see just the very, very careful design in both Hornet's moveset and in the enemies and environments that you're playing around in. And so there were two levels that you could select from in the demo. There was the Moss Grotto, and then there were the Deep Docks. And the Moss Grotto effectively served as a tutorial. I think the way that like Hornet is kind of waking up and you have kind of an intro, it definitely seems like the very beginning of the game. And it's just the enemies there are a lot less threatening, where they all die really easily, and I think it's just kind of to get you used to the move set of what she's capable of. But
Sure.
The Deep Docks don't really play around. But before we get into that environment specifically, I want to talk about her move set and kind of a few of the big takeaways that I came down from. So in Hollow Knight, you learned very quickly how powerful it is doing that downward attack and just bouncing off enemies.
Yeah, it's the Scrooge McDuck.
Yes, exactly. DuckTales. You can't do that here. You can, but it is not a straight downward attack. So Hornet has a diagonal downward attack. You can go in either direction. But it's really interesting because sometimes you get a lot of speed out of it, and if you actually time it right, I feel like you can repeatedly diagonal attack like quicker than you can walk. And so I'm just interested to see what speedrunners do with it. But yeah, so that angle can be really valuable, but you have to use it carefully. And I think you have to.
It's interesting chopping through those vines.
Yeah, you have to use it more carefully than
the downstab.
The downstab that you had in the previous game. Because what's interesting about it is you can bounce off enemies, but it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, well, I had to go left, and then I had to go right to get that extra attack in.
A little more involved.
She just did like a clamber. Is that new?
Just the jump that you're talking about?
Well, when she got to the edge, she like pulled herself
up. Yeah, no, that's new. That's brand new. The other thing that's interesting about the diagonal attack is when you do it, if you do it at like the apex of your jump, it doesn't go all the way to the ground. And you have to be really careful about that. So you can't just be like, okay, I need to do a diagonal slice, because in boss fights or even just regular enemies, I would jump and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to come down with diagonal attack. But my attack animation would end before I actually reached them.
Yeah.
So I'd end up taking damage. And so there's a lot of skill involved with using that move effectively, which I thought was really, really cool. The other thing that's interesting is, so like Hollow Knight, you can heal, and your resource this time is Silk. And if you look in the top left of the screen, kind of below the health there, you see that stool.
Silk, yeah.
So it kind of functions similarly, where you hold down the button and heal. But there are two things that separate it from Hollow Knight, where in Hollow Knight, you can just keep holding it down, and your health will slowly refill. In Silksong, it's all or nothing. So when you do it, you'll just heal all the way.
Oh.
Yeah, and then if you heal, all of your silk will be gone.
Okay. That's really neat.
Yes. So it's all the time, and especially during boss fights, where you can take a lot of damage very quickly. You kind of have to decide, like, okay, do I want to risk it and get down to that last little blip of health, or do I want to use it now? If you're good, you can fill up the spool pretty quickly. But when you're learning a fight, it's a lot harder. And so the Deep Docks boss, it was a difficult fight, and so it was much harder than any other area in the game to fill up that spool of thread. And so just constantly having to figure out when to kind of cash in on that resource is really interesting, because not in the Moss Grotto demo, but in the Deep Docks demo, you also have a skill that you can use, and it's just a wide attack that comes out very quickly, which is nice. But that also uses your silk.
Oh,
so again, you got it, and you can only heal if your silk is full. So.
Does the other move take away all your silk too?
No.
Okay.
So if you're, or at least the skill that I had, I can't speak to all the skills, obviously. But in the skill that I had in the Deep Docks demo, it just took a little bit. It probably took like maybe a fifth or sixth of your spool, somewhere around those lines. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, just being reminded of looking at their gameplay, that I really appreciate about Hollow Knight is there's just such a good sense of feedback when you get hit or when the enemy hits you. There's no question about it. And I think that's one thing that even some of the games that I played at E3, when you're dealing with brawlers and things, sometimes I wasn't sure. It's like, am I connecting? Is my punch or my kick or whatever connecting to this character? And you just don't have that problem here.
Yeah, it's really cool how that feedback that you get from attacking things actually plays into the encounter design, because in the Deep Docks demo, it's so great. Like, everything that you're fighting has this giant, like, I think they're bells that they have on their head, these metal bells. And so you actually can't use your diagonal attack to deal with them because their head is protected. And so your diagonal attack is good, not only because you're in the air and can cover a lot of space, but like Hollow Knight, part of the reason it's good is when you attack something on the ground, you actually knock yourself back a little bit when you strike. But here, since that is kind of like the option that you need to do if you're not doing like a jumping upward attack or a jumping horizontal attack, these like foot soldier guys with these bells on their head, they would attack very, very quickly. And so you could make it where when you hit them, the knockback from your attack would give you just enough space to dodge their attack, which was really, really cool. The other thing, it was basically they had a ground version of this guys, and they had like little pokers that they would try to stab you with. And then they would have flying enemies that also had bells on their heads, but these guys were throwing bombs at you.
Ooh.
And what was cool about the bombs is they'd be chucking them all around. And, man, the environments are just gorgeous.
Yes.
They'd be chucking them all around, and it would take a while for them to blow up, but you could actually use them against the enemies if you wanted to. Like, you could interact with them and knock them, and the enemies would take damage from the bombs. And so I thought that was just really cool, having that kind of thing to play around with. As you can see in the footage, it speaks for itself. Very gorgeous game. But something I liked about the Deep Docks in particular is, like, you'd be summoning things out of the ground. Like, you'd be summoning a bench out of the ground, and there'd be 3 giant bells above it, kind of in a triangle formation. You could go, and you could hit all the bells, and
that's cool.
It would make that sound. But the last thing that I want to talk about is the Deep Docks boss, which was fantastic. So it's kind of this white spirit nimble sword fighter, and so it felt like a classic duel, which was really great. And the boss was like a kind of like a fencer, and they would kind of dance around the stage, and so they would like jump and kind of spin a little bit in the air, like lunge forward in an arc, I guess is a more accurate way of saying it. And they could just cover so much ground with all their attacks. They had a thrust that took them all the way across the stage. They would jump up in the air and have a diagonal attack that was similar to you. But the coolest thing that they had was a counter. So at one point, or it happens all the time throughout the fight, but the boss will like crouch down and put the sword above her face. And it was really cool because if you knew that it was coming and you could kind of get into the rhythm of the fight, you could get behind the boss and get in a couple of hits while they were doing the counter, because it was only countering from the front side. But if you were playing too aggressively and like you were going down for an attack and while you were in the air, they initiated the counter, you would get hit by it and they would do like the just like a fury of
That's
slices. And you would actually lose 2 bits of health instead of just 1. So that was pretty brutal. But
it's interesting to me that this is a lava-based level because when you
Yeah, when you
when
said
you first
docks.
said docks, I'm like
Yeah.
I'm thinking completely different color palette.
yeah.
There's the bombs in.
I'm not sure on this. I'd have to like go and see Hollow Knight footage or play Hollow Knight like side by side to see. But it seemed like Hornet jumped a little bit higher
Right.
Maybe a
than
little
the
more
first
agile
game. Yeah.
Right off the bat.
But I'm not. It just felt that way to me. I'm not 100%
Were there
sure.
like the runes again or anything like that? I forgot they were called in the first game.
Yeah, I didn't really get a chance to explore with
I
that.
mean, like the badge.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah,
Badges,
it was just like, hey, you have this skill, and so I messed around with that,
Cool.
the forward slash a little bit, and then just trying to wrap my head around like the basic combat mechanics.
Is this
but-
like a full-on like huge like pretty much?
This is a sequel, yes.
Okay,
This is a
so it's
sequel
not
to
just
Hollow
like
Knight.
a little like
Correct.
6-hour thing. Okay.
Correct. That is how I understand it. Is that is a
Gotcha.
full-on sequel to
Man.
Hollow Knight. And the thing is, if you think about Hollow Knight and how much they put into that game, when they say, "Hey, this is a sequel," like it's not
Yeah.
going to be some short
Yeah, you're right, man.
journey. Yeah.
Hollow Knight is a meaty game.
But yeah,
Stoked, so stoked for this game, dude.
Right.
So stoked.
it's a game where the foundation of Hollow Knight, right? The core Hollow Knight is so good on its own
Right.
that the things that I'm talking about, like, oh, this is how they're changing some of the attacks, or these are some of the new boss ideas that they have, or here's what they're doing with enemies. Like, yeah, fundamentally, it is more Hollow Knight, but because the game is already so good, they can focus so much on these little things, and those little things have a pretty substantial impact.
Yeah,
As well.
definitely.
So I'm thrilled with what I played. It was the only demo at E3. I guess it was the only thing I played on the show floor where they're like, "All right, you need to step away from
That's
the."
so funny.
Yeah. So.
Cool. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this game, and and it's funny because she's such a different character, and I think just even that is enough to kind of get me back into it, and I kind of wonder. I mean, maybe it'd be too fundamentally different, but I kind of wonder if they'll even, after Silksong is done, find some way to add her back into
Hollow Knight
the
1.
original game.
Yeah.
Like do a second playthrough with her, but I don't know how much extra balancing that would require.
Now that I'm being reminded of it in the footage, you also see these guys that don't have these bells on their heads, but they're carrying these shields, and they have 2 different attacks. So they have the straightforward charge where you can't hit them from the front horizontally.
Yeah.
And so the jumping diagonal attack is very good. But then they have another attack where they jump up and they cover their heads, and so you have to hit them from
Yeah.
the sides or below.
These two right here, just together, are already like, man, this is a pain.
Right, exactly.
You gotta really
but
work with it.
That's why it's so
Yeah.
good. Is just in this little bit that I played, you could never just rely on the same strategy.
Yeah.
They're really forcing you to get as much as you can out of the combat. And I
I have
respect
one
that so
final
much.
question, Ben.
Yeah.
So Hornet in the first game had like dialogue and everything like that. It was
Yeah.
like an actual character. When Hollow Knight you
Yeah.
kind of played was kind of like a silent protagonist
Right.
almost. Was Hornet like active in this game, or did you see any like story moments where they were talking or anything like that?
They had a little bit of an intro, but it's hard paying attention and fully processing the story. But beyond that, I would say this was very much a gameplay focused demo. There were characters that I interacted with. So there was a Smithy, this giant bug Smithy that you talked to. That was typical charming Hollow Knight character.
Right.
But yeah, I was really just kind of trying to wrap my head
Sure,
around
yeah.
the gameplay, and
Okay.
so I can't really comment on if she will present herself the same way she did in Hollow Knight.
Cool. Right on.
Very nice. So yeah, we actually have someone else dropping in. So Damiani is gonna swap in for one of you guys. Brad, do you want to take a break
Yeah.
since you're
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of funny? And give us just a second, and we'll
actually,
switch seats.
Blood. Sorry,
Yeah.
interrupting here. So to switch over, we actually need Ian. He's finishing setting up some stuff. He just needs a few more minutes. So is there a...
Oh, is there
wait,
something else I want to throw in there real quick?
Oh, you actually ready, Ian? Okay.
Oh, we're good.
Okay, we can actually do a swap out now.
Nice.
All right.
Cool.
Give us 1 sec.